That was a really long thank you. So I'm sitting up here and I got tears coming down my eyes, and I'm doing the same thing with my fingers, and I'm thinking of what my dad would say to me. He'd say, Greg, a man's got to know his limitations, right? Man's got to know his limitations. Well, I met my limitation there just a moment ago. But he would look at it a little bit differently. He'd break into one of his jokes, because he loved Clint Eastwood. That's why he would say that. He'd say, a man's got to know his limitations, because that's from a Clint Eastwood movie. So he'd break into a joke right after that, because that was a lead-in. He'd tell these same jokes over and over and over again, and he'd talk about, probably in this instance, an old man fishing, because he loved to fish, an old man fishing. I'm going around in my boat. If I were going, I'm telling you, Greg, you have to know your limitations. If I'm out in my boat fishing, and a frog jumps into my boat, and all of a sudden I hear that frog say to me, kiss me, kiss me. I'm not going to do it. Not even if that frog says, kiss me, I'll turn into a beautiful woman and I'll be your bride. He said, not even, especially if she says that. Because at my age, I'd rather have a talking frog. Now, how did you know that? That may have been true. May have been a true story. About limitation. Well, I hardly believe in limitation anymore. I just want to let you know that. I hardly believe in it. And when I do believe in limitation, it seems to set me in that place where I feel separate from you. If I believe in limitation, then I'm believing in something less than wholeness. And today I believe in one perfect wholeness. What do you think of that idea? Pretty good idea, huh? One perfect wholeness. And if you were paying attention when you drove into the driveway, that's what it said on the marquee, right? It said one perfect wholeness. And that's what I believe in today. And it's not only because Ernest Holmes says that, and not only because many other amazing spiritual leaders and mystics from all faiths say that there is one perfect wholeness. It's because I see it and feel it in my own life. I recognize that perfect wholeness. I recognize it every single day. Let me tell you what Ernest Holmes says about that one perfect wholeness. It's on page 496. I'm always right. It's page 463. It's okay to be wrong, I mean, actually, it's really okay to be wrong. I like being wrong. There's such pressure in being right all the time, If the expectation is that you're going to be wrong, it's okay. It's good, I feel now that I'm not worried about being wrong like I did after I got the first ding in my brand new car. Because on the one hand, it really kind of hurt, but on the other hand, all the pressure was off. You know what I mean? On the other hand, it was okay. You got the first ding, the second ding's no big deal, right? You got to get over that. So being wrong is just like that, like the ding in the car, First one sort of hurts, and then you recognize that it could happen all the time, and you just let it be. So Ernest Holmes says about wholeness, life is one perfect wholeness. The universe is a unit. God is one. And so when Ernest Holmes says that, everybody pays attention. He writes a textbook, and everybody loves that. And so I decided that I would make an affirmation out of that same sort of thing, and I did that some time ago, and you've heard it before, but I want you to join me again. There's only one thing.
There's only one thing.
It may look like more than one thing. It may feel like more than one thing, but it's only one thing. Expressing as you, expressing as me, and everything we see. Now, that's a statement of unity. That's a statement of wholeness. See, there's only one thing, and that one thing is spirit. That one thing is life. That one thing is universal mind. That one thing is intelligence. That one thing is goodness. Whatever you want to call it, there's only one thing, and that one thing expresses as each and every one of us, and expresses as everything in the universe. God only had God to make us, to make the universe, to make anything that we see, and to fashion the things that we don't see, our feelings, our emotions, that creative resource that we utilize, that pool of resource in our mind's eye that creates the things that we see in our life. Because that's the creative process, from thought to reality. It begins in the thinking. And so today I'd like you to think of life as one wholeness, one perfect wholeness. When Ernest Holmes wrote the book, This Thing Called Life, he was thinking exactly along those lines. Ernest begins the book so completely about wholeness. He says, there is a universal wholeness seeking expression through everything. That's kind of what I just said, didn't I? So I don't know how he knew I was going to say that. We are calling it simply life. The religionists call it God. The philosopher calls it reality. Life is infinite energy coupled with limitless creative imagination. Different religions call it different things, and that's the truth. She complains about the things I say. It's my grandchild, in case you don't know that. So I get to see her all the time, but she's learning. She's learning. And so when Ernest Holmes says that there's only this perfection, what he's utilizing as his historic tradition is some of the greatest teachers of all time. You know, Jesus said exactly that. Jesus came to this world to give us a message that there is joy, there is peace, there is harmony, and sometimes it expresses as discomfort. Sometimes that joy, peace, and harmony expresses as a dirty diaper. And so when a dirty diaper happens, I say, change. 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 It's the only way to do it. So Ernest Holmes has this idea of this one wholeness, this one absolute wholeness. And he says that Jesus came to the world to bring exactly that. He said, Jesus was a happy and radiant soul. He was triumphant. He said, I have come that ye might have joy. I have come that ye might have peace. I have come that ye might have life. Not just a little peace, not just a little joy, but all the joy, all the life, all the peace, all the goodness. It's there for us. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. What I am, you may become. That was a central message. These things ye shall do, and even greater. Talking about life, but first you must recognize it for what it is. That is, it's a wholeness, it's a unit. You and I are connected. And at the larger level, everything's connected. Because everything is that which God is. Everything is spirit. You know, this tradition that I'm talking about of recognizing God as one, that there is no other. There's nothing other than God. It is you and me and everything we see, is not just being spoken from this podium. It's being spoken by people in many, many different religious traditions that know and recognize this major truth. And that truth is with a capital T. You know, the Dalai Lama, when he talks about his religion, he says, my religion is really about peace. That's it. He describes it with one word. It's really about peace. When people talk at a higher level about what their religion means and they're Christian, they say, my religion's really about peace. When somebody of the Hindu faith says, you know, I could tell you my religion, it's about peace. I can resonate with that. So we don't exclude anybody here because we're going to talk about that stuff that's common to everyone. Those common things are truth with a capital T. And there is one wholeness in this world that demands our recognition. And why is that hard? Because we make it hard. Sometimes we do things, we think in certain ways that create separation. We do it when we're in fear, when we're in resentment, when we're in anger. And then all of a sudden we become separate from one another. I become separate from you if I have anger toward you. I become separate from you if I'm fearful around you or what's going on in the world today. And there's all kinds of reasons today to feel separate. I mean, all you got to do is turn on the news, and you can see just how separate we ought to feel, right? Let's close the borders. Let's do this. Let's do that. Separation everywhere. But knowing the truth with a T allows us to recognize the real truth about life. Now, I'm not saying that there's any reason to look at the micro issues that I was just talking about and apply a specific solution like open the borders or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that what we need to do in our mind's eye is to recognize the oneness and allow that to give us direction. That's all. Just recognize our oneness and allow it to give us direction. And so, what about resentment? Resentment is an awful thing. Resentment is something that crowds out every other thought. It really does. If you have resentment around a person, a place, a thing, an organization, anybody, anything, any ideology, then you have an issue of separation. Resentment's a rough one. You know, I was talking about resentment to a friend of mine, and he said, I got to tell you, I had, and by the way, we were talking about shifting, changing, moving from a place of resentment to a place of love and wholeness and understanding that we are one. And so I said, that's what I strive to do every single day. And he said, I had an experience that I want to relate to you about that exact same issue. He said the other day, and he's in the entertainment industry, he said the other day I was on the set, and I got word that we were going to be directed by a particular person that is just really, really difficult. And those aren't the words he used. He used other words to describe the difficulty. He said, I was just dreading it. I knew it was going to be absolutely horrible, and it was. I sat down and started receiving direction, and he was going at us. He was just mean and nasty and angry and fearful. And I couldn't help myself. I just blurted out, "Do you need a hug?" I kind of looked at him like, "Are you kidding me, man? You did that? You actually said that?" He said, "Yeah," and people looked at me like I was crazy too. Nobody laughed or said, "Yeah, you need a hug." Nobody did any of that. They just kind of looked at me like I was crazy to interrupt this rant. And he said, and when it was all over, we got up and we started walking out, and the guy yelled to me, "I'll take that hug now." And he said, I walked up to him, and I don't think he expected me to come up to him and actually give him a hug, but I did. I walked up to him and I actually gave him a hug. And while I was doing that, he whispered in my ear, "I'm sorry, sometimes I get in fear." And I just thought, what a story. That is so cool. I mean, what that tells you is that there's really never a justifiable resentment. I mean, as soon as he said that to me, I lost all feeling around who this man was and what his problem was, and felt a kinship with him and a oneness with him. I felt that whole idea that I needed to join in his resentment had just dropped away. So it gave me an idea that there's a way to look at things differently. And that idea it's not new, but we discussed it. That what he did was he then started to look at this man as if prayer was needed. He started to look at this man as if he were a sick friend and needed help, rather than somebody who was just that bleeping person, And it changed the way he viewed this guy. It changed the way the relationship actually worked between them, and was a wonderful, wonderful moment. Wayne Dyer talks about an experience that happened with a teacher, and I know we have quite a few teachers in here, a teacher who developed a resentment around a student. And this was in the 5th grade. Can you imagine developing a resentment around a 5th grader? And I say that tongue in cheek. Because, yeah, I can imagine it. I can. So this fifth grader would not pay attention to anything the teacher was saying. The fifth grader would just doodle on a piece of paper. When asked a question, would not even respond. The fifth grader was withdrawn and would not even give the teacher eye-to-eye contact. Wouldn't even do it. When a test was passed out, he'd just fill out little bubbles and not even care about what he was doing. And one day, the teacher was passing back tests and passed the test back to this student that she developed a resentment around, and that student had gotten an F, a big old F. And she decided that instead of just putting the little F at the top like she normally do, she'd make it big. Big F on that paper so that everybody could see it as she was slapping it down on that student's desk. She really, really had a resentment. She decided that she was going to figure out what this kid was all about. So what she did was she went back into his records and she started talking to some of the teachers that he'd had previously. And it turns out that in second and third grade, this child was a great student and the teachers were just raving about him, saying, he is fabulous. He's interactive with the kids. He does all of his work. He's incredibly bright. Just love this child. And then there was a notation in fourth grade about him starting to get a little bit withdrawn, and a note at the bottom that said his mother is diagnosed with cancer. So a little bit of investigation, and she found out that late that year, the child's mother had passed away from cancer, and she had recognized that moment that she found out that she had developed and acted in anger around a totally unjustifiable resentment. And when Wayne Dyer tells this story, he gets a little teary-eyed. When I tell the story, I get a little teary-eyed, and I'm reminded that those resentments that we have are never justified. There's always a different way to look at it. Because these resentments are going to take us to that place where we feel limitation, where we feel separation, where we feel like we are not one with that person or even one with this whole thing we call life. Those resentments detract us from the knowing, the true knowing of truth with the capital T. And I got to tell you, from my experience in life, I know that you guys probably have one or two of those resentments that still remain, because I do. Even though I know all of the truth about this stuff, I know that when I think about it, the separation remains. You know, sometimes those little resentments can pop up and they're not as serious because they're not around a person that you know, but they might be around an activity that you're involved in. I remember driving home one time from a trip that Jackie and I were at, and it was one of those spiritual retreats, you know, and so we were all spiritual, only I wasn't acting so spiritual because I was on the road. And so it was a crowded road, and people were playing their little car games as they normally do, you know, and I wasn't very happy about that. And so I was doing things that were bringing about separation between me and other drivers. You know, somebody wanted to get in front of me, I'd pull up a little bit, not enough room there, you know. I'd make sure that nobody gets ahead of me. I don't know if you've ever felt that. Gosh. You know, I guess we wouldn't be human if we didn't, huh? So Jackie turns to me and she says, will you stop fighting with all those people on the road? And I thought, I'm not fighting with those people on the road. But the truth was I was. I mean, I wasn't saying anything, but just the little actions that I was engaging in were allowing her to see, because she knows me as well as she does, that I was engaged in a little resentful activity. And I needed to look at it a little bit differently. And so she said, will you stop? You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And she characterized it that way. Will you stop fighting with those people? At first, I thought, fighting? That's not fighting. And then I recognized the truth about it. And it was creating this animosity there. I mean, I was living in this little war zone while I'm driving, you know. I mean, it was a mini war zone, but it was still there. And so I had resentment around all of the people that were around me on the road rather than one happy river of love. You know, that's what that freeway is supposed to be, right? A river of love. I have a practitioner friend who calls the freeway the river of love. That's because she wants to change the way she feels about it, you know. So she calls it the river of love, and I thought all of a sudden, Nancy. I have to start acting a little more like Nancy. And so I decided I didn't care how long it took us to get home or who beat us there. I would just slow down and just enjoy the ride. And we started engaging in conversation and put some wonderful music on, and I'm putting along at about 62. And, you know, it was just absolutely magnificent. What a wonderful change in the way I began to look at that experience. And it happened like that, just like the resentment can happen. See, the secret is not to hold on to those things so that they create this separation for you again and again and again and again. You know, there's some people in my life that I have actually created some separation around because of some things that happened in the past. You know, while I was taking the time this morning in prayer, thinking about what I was going to talk about today, I decided distinctly that I was going to make some telephone calls after I'm through up here. I was going to make a couple of calls. I'm going to change the way I feel about that. I'm going to step out of that comfort zone of resentment, because there is a comfort zone in some of those resentments. There is a comfort zone that is really based in fear. But that comfort zone is all around, gosh, my idea of life is certainly better than yours. And so I get a little ego boost, you know, when I hold on to those resentments, because don't you know, if I didn't hold on to that resentment, I might backslide into that thing you call life. But that's not the truth. The truth is that I don't have to hold on to that resentment. The truth is I can change the way I feel about that. I can heal the rift between myself and anybody else. I can do that so that I can feel what I really want to feel in life. And that's the one perfect wholeness that the master teacher Jesus came to bring to us. That whole idea that there's one perfect wholeness. And I am that. I don't want to destroy that. So I have to be mindful of what it is that I do that could possibly do that. And so some forgiveness work, I think, is in order from time to time. And a good look at life, because there are some things about life that I oftentimes don't understand. My ego tells me that I have arrived from time to time at the end of this journey of perfection. You know how that feels? You're no longer on the journey. My gosh, I have arrived, you see, because I know that, and I know that, and I know this. But the truth is, it's all a journey. The truth is, we're on this journey. And the truth is, there's a way of looking at this journey that allows all of the things I've been talking about to just be, so that we can recognize that truly all is well. There's a poem. It's actually more of a prosy type poem that's written by a guy named Robert E. Quinn. And I really like this because it is truly about life's journey. And he just says simply, I'm building a bridge to my future, even as I'm walking on it. I love that. I'm building a bridge to my future, even as I'm walking on it. Hard to do, right? You see, we're always right in the middle of our future, but I'm building that bridge to my future even as I'm walking on it by boldly going into the land of uncertainty and regularly getting lost. But I get lost with ever-increasing confidence. That's the journey, you know? I get lost with ever-increasing confidence. You know, I have a really good friend who likes to tell a story about his recovery. He's a very spiritual man. He's an incredibly accomplished man, and he is receiving an award in the next few days for overcoming obstacles. He happened to be the president of the State Bar of California in 2005 and 2006, and he's one of my best friends. And he talks about his overcoming obstacles because he was an alcoholic of very, very, very difficult alcoholic, bad stripes, you know. He was a man who couldn't control his drinking, and he hurt his family and hurt his professional career as a result of it. He talks about all of these things in his past, even though he was the president of the State Bar, with great courage. And he says things like, you know, there's a hole that I was in, and nobody could get me out of that hole except somebody who'd been in it before. The doctor came by and dropped a prescription into the hole and couldn't help me out because the doctor had never been there before. The priest came by and prayed over me and sprinkled me and dipped me and all the other kinds of things that had to happen, but that didn't get me out of the hole because he hadn't been in that hole before. And then one day a man came by and jumped in the hole with me, and I looked at him and I said, "What are you doing down here? I've been trying to get out and you jumped in with me?" He said, "Yeah, it's okay. I've been here before. I know the way out." So he tells that story so that people can understand how he has changed his worldview, how he's changed his feeling about life, how he's changed everything that he sees through this new worldview, that he's actually building a bridge, making mistakes with ever more confidence. And so I want to thank you guys for being here today. I want you to recognize that I recognize the perfection in you, that I know that there's one perfect wholeness, and it is you. And so the way I do that is by saying, the God in me recognizes the God in you, and there's one word for that: namaste. Thank you.